the Offshore Petroleum and Greenhouse Gas Storage Act 2006. This legislation arises out of the proposed development of the Browse Basin. Oil and gas were discovered in the Browse Basin in the 1970s. However, there has not been a lot of development due to its relative isolation and the depth of water 425 kilometres off the coast of Western Australia. In recent years, the development of resources in the Browse Basin has begun. The Ichthys field is being developed by INPEX, piping gas and condensate over 800 kilometres from the basin to Darwin for processing. The LNG processing facility in Darwin is currently under construction, and the first train is expected to be operational in September 2017. The Woodside-led Browse joint venture has also looked at the development of 3 other fields in the Browse Basin, including the Tarossa field. This project has been a source of tension between the Western Australian Government, the Commonwealth Government and Woodside joint venture. The Tarossa field straddles Commonwealth and Western Australian jurisdictions. Its maritime borders were redefined in 2014 when Geoscience Australia discovered several rocky outcrops above the field. It was concluded that these outcrops should be considered islands and therefore belong to Western Australia rather than the Commonwealth. This meant that the Western Australia share of the Browse project rose from approximately 5% to 65.4%, and the Commonwealth Government share dropped to 34.6% of the royalties. The purpose of this legislation before us is to provide protection and certainty to all parties.
Body with Khloe Kardashian.
Yeah, fair enough, Alexi.
RuPaul's Drag Race.
RuPaul's Drag Race,
Yeah.
That's very good. Project One Ray's my dream show. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you here.
Great to be here.
Cheers, guys.
La La Land, Lion and Moonlight are all showing at cinemas everywhere.
I'm James Valentine, you're watching The Mix, and the Sydney Festival has just wrapped 3 big weeks of theatre, music and art. First-time festival director Wesley Enoch wanted audiences to reconnect with their human senses. ABC art reporter Rachel Robinson did just that and discovered 3 unique works.
Summer in Sydney, it's all about the beach. But this year, a new kind of beach is drawing the crowds. A 60-metre-long ocean of more than 1 million white balls. This public art installation has been one of the biggest attractions at the 2017 Sydney Festival.
People are just turning up in their droves, like thousands and thousands of people a day, going through to play in a ball pit. Isn't that amazing?
I'm slightly afraid I'm going to step on a child.
That means companies could conceivably have to pay it even if they were not making any profit at all. Not surprisingly, it's being condemned by Rio Tinto and BHP, who would be the first companies that would have to pay this new tax. Both would have to pay an additional $1.5 billion a year. Both have said publicly that it will hit jobs and investment in Western Australia. This proposal has also been criticised by the Premier of Western Australia, the Western Australian opposition leader, and we probably hear them speaking a lot in the next couple of weeks, the Prime Minister, the federal leader of the opposition, and although it's taken him a while, last but not least, by the Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce. Last week he urged the Western Australian Nationals leader to dump this plan. That earned him a bit of a touch-up from Brendan Grills, who called him a lackey from the Pine Xenophon government. It will be interesting to see what happens from here. It was only a few weeks ago that the Deputy Prime Minister was telling the New South Wales National Party to dump their plan to ban greyhound racing. Well, he got his way there, and we've seen what's happened. It'll be interesting to see if he can roll the Western Australian National Party as well. I hope that he succeeds sooner rather than later. What is important here, generally and in this legislation, is certainty. That is what this legislation is about, providing certainty for the oil and gas industry, and it's also needed in the iron ore industry. I commend this bill to the House.
Thank you, Senator Moore. Senator Hanson-Young.
Mr Acting Deputy President, I rise to speak to the Offshore Petroleum and Greenhouse Gas Storage Amendment Bill 2016 and foreshadow that I do have an amendment that I will seek to move in the committee stage. This bill seeks to amend the Offshore Petroleum and Greenhouse Gas Storage Act 2006 in a number of ways, including to give effect to arrangements between the Commonwealth and state relating to revenue from petroleum pools that straddle the boundaries of both the Commonwealth and state jurisdictions. It also, and this is important, retrospectively validates payments by NOPSEMA since December 2011 by making it clear that there is a regulation-making power supporting those payments. These amendments are in response to a High Court case which threw them into doubt. In other words, of course, this is just another of a frequent bills which come into this place and pass this parliament aimed at keeping the offshore oil and gas industry going, giving them the regulations, that industry the regulations that they want and that suit them. We spend a long time in this place making sure that big oil and fossil fuel companies get exactly the regulatory settings that they ask for, and this bill, Mr Acting Deputy President, is no exception. Of course, the campaign to protect the Great Australian Bight in my home state in South Australia is one that has galvanised our local communities. It is a campaign that is based on wanting to protect our precious marine life, protect that precious ecosystem and ensure that drilling for oil by massive multinationals does not occur. But of course what we do know, Mr Acting Deputy President, is that because of the lack of courage and spine from both the state Labor government and indeed the federal Labor and Liberal parties, that companies like Chevron, big multinational, big oil companies like Chevron, continue to put pressure on our parliamentarians to get access to the Great Australian Bight so that they can drill for oil. Now, there is an argument that this is all about generating jobs in South Australia. Well, we know that that's false. We know that that is not true. Even when BP, as recently as last year, put forward applications to be able to drill for oil, it became clear that they had no intention of employing South Australians, or indeed many Australians at all, in these oil drilling operations. Most of the jobs, Mr Acting Deputy President, would be kept for specialists that would be flown in from overseas. But of course, local jobs in the area would be put at extreme risk. The tourism industry in South Australia and the fishing industry in South Australia, all at risk if companies like BP or now, as we've heard, Chevron, get their way and are able to start drilling for oil in the Great Australian Bight. Well, it's time that this parliament started standing up for these precious marine areas. Where these big multinational oil companies want to drill, Mr Acting Deputy President, is right smack bang in the middle of a whale sanctuary. Smack bang in the middle of an area that is meant to be a Commonwealth marine park, protected, protecting our fishing industries and protecting our tourism industry. But of course all of that would be put at risk if big oil, big multinational companies like Chevron got their way. It's time that this parliament started to stand by the previous obligations of the Commonwealth Marine Park, an area that is meant to be protected, and do something to ensure that this national treasure is actually kept free of a disaster such as what we saw in the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico, of course, Mr Acting Deputy President, we know has been devastated. Marine life killed, local jobs devastated because of BP's oil mess there. Chevron want to put our spectacular marine park at risk, and if they are given approval, Mr Acting Deputy President, there will be several other companies lining up behind them. And what is the point of having a marine protected area, a Commonwealth marine park, if you're just going to let big oil come in and drill willy-nilly? The Bight is an essential sanctuary for our right whales, our southern right whales, and a feeding ground for threatened sea lions, sharks, tuna and migratory sperm whales. We can't afford to put that at risk. South Australians do not support opening up the Great Australian Bight to big foreign oil companies, and it's time that this parliament stood up for the area and for our local communities, which is why, Mr Acting Deputy President, when we get to the committee stage of this bill, I will be moving an amendment to say that we cannot allow the drilling of oil to occur in what is meant to be a marine protected area, a Commonwealth marine park, a whale sanctuary. It is too precious to put at risk. Our tourism jobs in South Australia, our fishing jobs in South Australia are too precious and too important to our state's economy to put that at risk so that a foreign oil company can rack up some more profit. We know the South Australian community will miss out. It's time that South Australian MPs in this place, senators in this place, do the right thing and tell big oil to bugger off.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Back.
Yes, Acting Deputy President, I rise with pleasure to support the Offshore Petroleum and Greenhouse Gas Storage Amendment, Petroleum Pools and Other Measures Bill, and I thank Senator Moore for her courtesy in supporting what, of course, is an incredibly sensible bill. Acting Deputy President, I will be attempting in the next few minutes to not only explain the significant importance of this bill, but also naturally, to explain to the chamber and to those listening how vitally important the offshore oil and gas industry is to Australia, to employment, the $200 billion of investment that is undertaken in Australia today in the gas sector, making us by 2019 the largest exporter of LNG in the world. And I will also be commenting in my contribution of the enormous value of Chevron extending its environmental responsibility, which you've seen in evidence and in abundance on Barrow Island offshore Western Australia, to the Great Australian Bight. Senator Hanson Young and I have sat in the inquiries in Adelaide, Mr President, in which I have been able to spell out the high level of environmental—
Order. It being 2 p.m. we move to questions without notice. You'll be in continuation, Senator.